Right, good morning ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of Cabinet, Staffordshire County Council today, Wednesday the 16th of April 2025. First item on the agenda are apologies. Mr Bradbury, do we have any apologies for absence?
Good morning, Leader. No, there's no apologies on this occasion.
Item number 2 is declarations of interest in accordance with Standing Order 16. Are there any declarations of interest? For the record, nobody's indicating. Agenda item number 3 is the decision notice of the meeting held on the 19th of March 2025. Is it your wish I sign that up as a correct record of the meeting? Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item number 4 is Leaders' Update. Ladies and gentlemen, since our last meeting, the clocks have changed. The lighter nights mean there's more opportunity to enjoy our beautiful county. I regularly walk my new puppy Maisie in the parks around Lichfield, taking in the fresh air and green spaces at 5 o'clock in the morning when it's still dark. Lichfield Cathedral and its beautiful red sandstone spires is on my doorstep, and Poms, winner of Coffee Shop of the Year in the Destination Staffordshire Tourism Award, is just a stone's throw away. And thank you to Councillor Wilson for presenting those awards on behalf of Staffordshire County Council. Across the county, we're lucky to have many picturesque landscapes, historic landmarks and hidden gems. You might have seen that Eccleshall in Stafford was named as one of the best places to live in the country by the Times newspaper this year. Congratulations to Councillor Purtis. It's down to you single-handedly making it the best place in the country to live. Staffordshire Day is coming up, and on the 1st of May, it's a celebration of everything that's wonderful about the place we call home. The first Staffordshire Day took place in 2016, the year the county turned 1,000 years old, and it's now in its 9th year. The date of the 1st of May was chosen through a public poll, as it's the anniversary of Josiah Wedgwood setting up his pottery company in 1759. For this year's celebrations, we're inviting people across the county to capture what they love most about Staffordshire in a photograph and share it with us so that we can showcase throughout the celebration. Year 4 and 5 pupils in 20 schools across the county have also been busy designing a range of brilliant Staffordshire-themed plates as part of a competition run by We Are Staffordshire. The imagination and creativity put into all of their designs is excellent, and now people across Staffordshire can choose winning designs to be recreated as real plates in fine bone china by a local firm, Duchess 1888. I'm getting my words muddled, I'm so sorry. Of course, this year, 1st of May is also polling day, and so this is my last meeting as leader of the council before upcoming county council elections. It's been a real honour to lead this organisation for nearly 5 years, and I'd like to take the opportunity to thank my cabinet members and all those who work for us, making a real difference in our communities. Thank you for everything that you've done. So, for the first time in 5 years, what I've decided not to do is steal the Deputy Leader's thunder for the Staffordshire Means Back to Business thing. I knew I would do it just the once, but in between times, we've got the minutes of the meeting of the Property Subcommittee held on the 2nd of April 2025. Can I have that as a correct record? Councillor Price, it was only you and I were there, so there we go. That is a correct record. Staffordshire, agenda item number 6, Staffordshire Means Business, and this is an entirely undamaged speech by the Deputy Leader, courtesy of myself.
So I think there's a little bit of end of term giddiness in the room. It's very, very exciting. And I must just say, so I don't forget to say it later, how much of a privilege and pleasure it's been to serve as Deputy Leader of the Council during this term as well. So thank you to all colleagues around this table for your help and support during these 4 years. Regarding the economy update, I intend to keep it reasonably snappy today, if only because I've got another 2 items on the agenda and people might get tired of hearing my voice. So, as always, firstly, I'd like to provide Cabinet with an update on the most recent Universal Credit claimant counts for Staffordshire, which were released yesterday. This past month saw an increase of 180 claimants in Staffordshire, which means that we now have 3% of our working age population claiming universal credit. That compares to the West Midlands region at 5.6%, so not far off half the rate of the West Midlands, and is well below the average for England of 4.3%. Within that, we saw an increase of youth claimants of 70. So our youth claimant rate now stands at 5% versus 5.8% nationally and 7.8% in the West Midlands. This unfortunately seems to be an inevitable consequence of the increase in employers' national insurance in particular, which is creating a headwind in terms of employment. But as we are always able to say in Staffordshire when we report these figures, our long-term trends are very strong. Staffordshire remains a very good place to get a job and to develop a career. But for those who are seeking employment or seeking a better job, I will just remind them of our Staffordshire Jobs and Careers Service, which is there to link job seekers and employers to one another, together with training packages, which is often the crucial element for accessing the highly skilled jobs that we have available in Staffordshire. Moving on from that, I felt it was appropriate just to update Cabinet in our final meeting on some of the key employment sites that we're working on around the county. One of the main reasons why Staffordshire is such a good place to get a job is that we have a really strong partnership between business and the public sector in terms of bringing forward key employment sites to make sure that employers can invest here and grow here and create the jobs that our people need. The first of those is our Chatterley Valley West scheme, which is being led by this county council, which will generate 1,700 jobs and an increase in GVA for our economy of £67 million per annum when it's fully completed, and will garner £60 million of private sector investment. The earthworks on the site are now fully completed, and construction of the first major building on the site is expected to start this month, to be completed by the end of this year, and planning is well progressed for the other development plots on the site. We're excited to see who the new occupiers will be for the buildings as they go up on the site, and with its close proximity to the A500, M6 and West Coast Main Line, together with the business rates relief that occupiers can take advantage of on the site, with it being an enterprise zone, we are expecting there to be considerable interest there. Moving on, last month Cabinet made the decision to enter into an agreement with Stafford Borough Council regarding funding through the third phase of the Levelling Up Fund for the redevelopment of Doxey Road, close to the railway station here in Stafford. Following that agreement, I'm pleased to say that we're now pressing ahead with the delivery of those plans. That progression includes now the full development of our planning application and demolition of existing buildings on site, so that we can get it ready for development there to start as soon as the planning permission is granted. We also continue work on our Eastgate regeneration scheme here in Stafford, just a few short steps from where we are sat today. The pre-development proof of concept works are now well progressed with our development partner for the scheme, Ion Developments. Surveys of all of the buildings have been completed, and at this stage we are aiming to complete the proof of concept for this scheme towards the end of this year, which should give us a good indication as to what we can ultimately deliver on the site that will be economically viable and that will be most useful to the town. Whilst we continue to progress with a number of these job development schemes, developers also continue in their efforts to deliver other employment sites and premises across the area. One recent development that I will mention with colleagues is Endurant, one of the largest property investors in the UK, is now completing the development of their fifth and final phase of Endurant Park Burton, with over 392,000 square feet of employment space across 5 warehouse spaces. This is the fifth phase of this particular development, which illustrates the demand that there is for the sort of space that Endurant are developing there in Burton. The new units should see the creation of around 500 new jobs and will be developed to the highest levels of sustainability. So we're very pleased to see that investment entirely from the private sector in another corner of our county. Whilst it's right to focus on these very large schemes, and these are just a sample of the schemes that are happening in Staffordshire, it is also important to highlight our support for smaller and medium-sized enterprises. And with that in mind in particular, I would just like to highlight the excellent work of the Growth Hub, our front door for business support across the county, which is now fully under the auspices of Staffordshire County Council and Stoke-on-Trent City Council, having moved across from the Staffordshire Local Enterprise Partnership. It has a great track record of helping businesses to grow and thrive, and is something that we look forward to continue developing. The final thing I was going to mention was our tourism awards, which the leader mentioned in his statement, which wasn't going to cover any of my update. But I will just highlight there how wonderful it was to see over 300 people attending the awards and to see winners announced across 20 different categories, which really illustrates the diversity of our tourism and hospitality sector. The winners of 14 of those categories will be progressing to represent the area in the Visit England Awards for Excellence, which will be held in Brighton in June. So when we return for the new council term, it will be exciting to see which of those 14 will have garnered national awards to match their Staffordshire awards. And with that, I'll hand back to you, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item number 7 is update to Highways and Transport Capital Programme 2025-2026, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Strategic Highways, Councillor DeVille. Councillor DeVille, I believe you are the bearer of good tidings.
As usual, Chairman, yes, this is good news, and good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to bring this report. It's just a brief update, colleagues, because you'll be aware that at the last Cabinet meeting last month, we approved the Highways and Transport Capital Programme for 25 and 26. And at that time, local authorities, we were still awaiting the assurance that integrated transport allocations from the Department of Transport. We made, at the time, a working assumption that that allocation would be the same as last year, which was £3.499 million. So just a couple of weeks ago, on the 28th of March, we finally received confirmation from the Department of Transport for this one-year allocation for integrated transport for £3.499 million. Now, alongside that allocation, there was a new allocation which hadn't been trialled with local authorities previously, called the Local Transport Grant. Now, this Local Transport Grant is a one-off capital fund of £15.626 million for next year only. Now, this is a one-off additional funding and is, colleagues, very, very welcome. It's great news and will build upon the additional investment made by this county council, but it needs to be noted and should be noted that it's still short of the funding required to fully maintain our highways at a steady state, as set out in the Highways and Transport Capital Programme. So good news, but challenges will undoubtedly remain with regard to the maintenance of our highways. Colleagues, it should also be noted that the funding being announced only a few days before our year end did present and does present challenges in mobilisation of crews, mobilisation of work programmes, etc. However, this County Council, through our Highways Transformation Programme, updated our delivery arrangements from the 1st of October, which means that we are able to respond to these short-term changes in resource. And that's really important. We all jumped on board very, very quickly and implemented our new programmes. Due to this being a one-off grant, and in accordance with advice from the Department of Transport, not to assume that the intention for settlements in future years, it's proposed that £5 million, and this is really important because it's best use of our money, it's proposed that £5 million of the County Council's reserves drawdown for the highway investment is moved to 26-27. Makes good financial sense. That will then give us resilience for future years. And in effect, by moving that back into reserves, it's future-proofing our future strategy with highways. To ensure the delivery of the local transport grant, and to ensure that it secures best value for money, a range of criteria have been considered in developing the proposed high-level programme, including lead-in times, organisational capacity, network availability and supply chain availability. It's an extremely complex process with many, many considerations. So the proposed broad investment plan is shown in Table 1 of paragraph 6, colleagues. But if I can just pinpoint a couple of really key areas of future investment, and some exciting developments. There's £5 million investment which will basically increase the number of crews out on site repairing our roads. And that will include the funding for a second JCB Pothole Pro. The JCB Pothole Pro basically works on large pre-patching areas. It's an extremely efficient machine for working on pre-patching and pre-surface dressing areas, but it's also used in general maintenance and general repairs of our highways and repairs of potholes. So that's a really important point. And then from highways, I'm really pleased to see that we're extending repairs of our footways. That's massively important. You know, it's our highways is all about bridges, structures, roads, and footways. And the safe use of our footways by pedestrians is just as important. And £1 million, well, £0.9 million is allocated to extending the footway programme. Another important point is that we're doubling the hotspot allocations. Hotspot allocations means more of the local resurfacing schemes. Resurfacing schemes not only offer us the very, very best value for money, but also offer us the most visible improvements on our highways. So that's three really, really important areas of investment. The delivery, it's essential that delivery of these programmes is monitored very, very closely. At the moment, you'll be aware that we hold weekly update meetings on progress, and this week's update meeting will immediately follow this meeting, and we'll be reporting progress back to Cabinet and to scrutiny panels on a quarterly basis. So not only important that we allocate the money, it's important that we spend the money in the right way, and it's really important that we closely monitor performance. I'd like to remind colleagues that although this additional funding is most welcome, it is far below the amount that local authorities across the country require to repair our roads properly for the long term. And it would actually take a doubling of this current level of government funding over a 20-year period to really address the current national maintenance backlog. So really good news, really, really good news, this additional funding. We'll use it well, we'll spend it well, but ongoing challenges, no doubt ongoing challenges will prevail. So we just get on with it, don't we, at Staffordshire County Council? We do what we always do. We don't bury our head in the sand. We make the best of the money that we've got and we spend it in the best way. And as a well-run council, we absolutely recognise the importance of investing in our highways, to our residents and to our businesses, which is why, of course, we topped up these government grants by funding an extra £65 million over the next 3 years in our Fixing More Roads programme, which has been a great success. During last year alone, the Fixing More Roads programme has delivered 37 major road resurfacing schemes across the county. It's carried out high-value preventative maintenance on 587 roads. Yeah, 587 roads to prevent new potholes forming. So that's good for future-proofing the condition, the future of our roads. We carried out large-scale structural patching repairs on a further 165 roads, and we've incredibly repaired around 40,000 potholes, as well, of course, as carrying out 4,000 local drainage repairs. The extra investment has been made possible because of a strong and responsible financial management by this county council. We're a well-run council. However, this funding is not sustainable for a local council to continue to fund major road maintenance programmes in this way. And clearly a long-term and sustainable means of increasing funding from government is needed. And of course, we as a council will continue to lobby central government for this funding. So, Chairman, subject to any questions or any points that you may have, I will then move to the recommendations.
Councillor Parry.
Thank you. Obviously, we welcome this additional grant funding, but we need to remember, don't we, that roads do not deteriorate in a single year. It's constant. So one-off funding isn't necessarily going to help us. It's useful, it's welcome, but it's not going to fix the real problem, which is sustained investment in our highways. And that's what we've been trying to do in Staffordshire. We've put in large amounts of capital over the years. Most recently, we agreed to spend 5 million last year, 5 million this year, and extend that to the period of the MTFS to top up the investment that we're making in our highways. And this year alone, we found an additional £12 million to put into that pot on top of this to ensure that we've got some a sufficient resource base to be able to get that workload down, to address the issues that climate change has given us in terms of the wet weather deterioration of our roads. But I think it's prudent to pull back some of that funding now, because I think otherwise we'll kind of have the water hydrant effect on our service rather than being more controlled and smooth running. So we'll be able to carry forward, as you've already said, some of that money for next year and hopefully continue a sustainable funding for our highways. Yeah. The proof of the pudding, though, is not the numbers in terms of, because these will wash over everyone's head, won't they? The proof of the pudding is in performance. You know, how good are we at spending this money, at targeting this money to actually make a difference in our highways? And despite what our dear friends in the BBC and the rest of the media think, that the only story in local government and the only story as we approach local elections is potholes, it's nonsense. If you look at the performance of Staffordshire, that's just been highlighted by the cabinet member, in the amount of the amount of work, the reduction in that backlog, the fixing of problems, the investment in teams, in resources, in equipment, all of that is making a material difference, a visible material difference, which for some reason has eluded reporters for various media outlets. So we just keep on doing our best, and we've put together the right amount of funding. We've done more than almost any council can do in these circumstances, in that we have, because we are a well-run council, we have the capacity to put more investment in. We have the capacity to use some of our reserves and other funding to actually increase the investments that we make in our roads. And I think that's a fairly, pretty much makes us an outlier in this, in that, in fact, we are investing, we are driving down those issues, we are improving our productivity in this area, whereas lots of councils you drive around are just ignoring the problem, yep. And yet they kind of pick on the ones that are doing, I think, a really good job.
Councillor Tagg.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I welcome this extra funding. I think we should see it in the context of obviously the money which we should have received, which the previous government signed off. We are not receiving that, so this helps us to claw a little bit of that back. I think I'd welcome the list there of ways of spending this money. I'd like to highlight two. I think that, as you said, Mark DeVille, the footpath treatment and maintenance, I think that's something which will be welcomed by local residents, particularly in my division. Also, I think the extension of the carriageway prevention treatment, and I've said before in Cabinet that this is a brilliant way of sort of future-proofing the roads, keeping those potholes from stop forming because of a nice treatment on top of the roads. In some areas of my division, they were done 5 years ago, and the roads are still, they were heavily potholed roads, and actually since they were patched and that preventative treatment put on top, we've had no problems with potholes. There's even one, not in my division, but in another part of Newcastle, which was done now 12 years ago. It was one of the first ones we did, with the preventative treatment, and it's still going strong now. So it just proves that if you can get there, patch those potholes and then give it a good top dressing treatment, preventative treatment, that it can last for many, many years and save on obviously costs in the future for constant pothole repairs. So really welcome that extra preventative treatments.
Thank you. Councillor Deville, if you could just sum up and then give us the recommendations, please.
Thank you, yeah, and thank you for those comments. Councillor Parry's absolutely right. 2 reasons we've invested this additional funding in the maintenance of our highways. Reason number 1 is because we place great importance on our highways, important to local residents, importance to businesses. So it's of high importance to us. And the second reason is that we're able to do this because we're a well-run council. We spend our money in the right areas. We spend our money in the areas that have greatest positive effect to the taxpayers of Staffordshire. And if I may finish, Chairman, in saying that it's not all about spending money, it's how we spend it. I will absolutely ensure that money is spent, or future council will ensure that money is spent in the right areas, that we are constantly looking for additional productivity and better ways of working. And I'll finish by saying, you know, Staffordshire, we just get on with it, don't we? Is this funding the perfect solution? No, it isn't. But we get on with it and we'll make the best of this job and we'll spend the money in the best way. And I sincerely thank our teams out in Staffordshire for the way that they've worked, that productivity has increased, that sense of urgency has increased on repairing our roads, and I think the roads in Staffordshire now are very, very much in a better state than they were 2 years ago, Chairman.
You've heard the recommendations. All those in favour?
Agreed.
Right, we have next I believe, a triumvirate of the Deputy Leader.
Well, it's just 2, I'm afraid.
Oh, is it 2?
Yeah.
A brace of Deputy Leaders. First of all is the Agenda Item 8, Community Learning Accountability Agreement 25-26. We're with the Deputy Leader.
Yeah. We are. Thank you very much, Leo. I was just waiting for my computer to catch up. Yes, so this is our annual update on our highly valued community learning programme, which strongly aligns to the council's vision, outcomes and priorities as stated within our strategic plan, to ensure that residents of Staffordshire are able to lead independent lives, participate in the local economy, and also to enjoy lifelong learning opportunities. The community learning service courses contribute to better health, well-being, confidence, resilience and independence for learners, leading to raised aspirations, and also hopefully offer the opportunity for the enjoyment of learning at whatever age. Learners and their families can participate in community learning courses that help them gain the skills they need to achieve personal aspirations, which often include making progress towards good jobs, and giving their children the best start in life, and being able to help participate in their learning. And it also helps to bring local communities together through the promotion and delivery of lifelong learning across generations, to improve lives, and to engage with people, whatever their circumstances may be. Looking back a little bit, Ofsted inspected this service in February 2023, and gave us a glowing good report, but which, when you read the report, although they're not allowed to say so in the headline, had an awful lot of elements of outstanding within it. It is a very strong service. The tailored learning function that we provide uses approximately £1.4 million of funding allocated by the Department for Education through the Adult Skills Fund, and that funding is utilised through the academic year to provide education across the county. The fund is designed to support adult learners in areas that are focused around skills, so functional skills, to provide meaningful, sustainable and relevant employment, and the fund gives us some flexibility to determine how it's allocated, to also pursue wider goals such as health and well-being, and equip parents and carers to support their children with their learning. In terms of how we use the framework, we divide that up into into 6 broad areas. So those are courses around wellbeing and independence, community and family progression, English, maths and digital skills, science, technology, engineering, and maths, so STEM, as a collective learning area, wider family learning for schools, and community learning, responsiveness, which is where we find a need that appears in year that we want to plug, that the wider skills providing community is not offering. In addition to that, we provide accredited provision for people who are do not have English as their first language, so English as a second language teaching at entry level and level 2 qualifications. In addition to this, the council has received £4.2 million from the Department for Education to deliver the Multiply programme. This is now, sadly, in my opinion, a legacy programme of the previous Conservative government, aimed to improve numeracy skills for people who don't have a GCSE maths qualification or equivalent. So those are, broadly speaking, the programmes that we are delivering. In terms of outcomes, community learning over the last 12 months has achieved 2,938 enrolments. That's against a target of 3,000. So we were within fingertips touch of that target, and it's very pleasing to see such a large number of Staffordshire residents wanting to enrol in those courses. In terms of the learner demographics, they're comparable to previous years. So 52% of our learners declared that they had a learning disability, difficulty or long-term mental health challenge, and at least 50% did not have qualifications above level 2. So that's 50% who didn't have GCSE or equivalent qualifications. And 42% of those lived in one of our priority wards in Staffordshire, which broadly speaking are the areas with higher levels of deprivation. The Multiply programme, which I'll remind colleagues is to develop mathematics skills, achieved 2,000 participants, of whom 1,512 enrolled on formal courses. So compared to the previous year, that was a 1,367% increase in the outreach participation levels, and a 401% increase in course enrolments. Of those people, 80% did not have a GCSE or equivalent qualification. 40% were males, 21% were unemployed and looking for work. So you can see the huge value of that scheme, and I have to say it is a shame that it's coming to an end this year, because you can really see the value in that. And I hope that the new government will perhaps create a similar scheme moulded in their image in the future. Regarding our broader community learning offer, we saw learners developing skills in 32% of cases in digital skills, 23% in English skills, and 16% in maths, alongside their chosen course of study. Back to Multiply, 63% of learners who participated in Multiply said they felt more positive about their future, having undertaken the courses. 49% felt more independent, 46% had developed new skills and new confidence in mathematics, and 40% had developed better English skills as well as a result of that. I'm just looking through the report to see what else I would want to highlight, and I think that I will leave it there. Are there any questions from colleagues?
Councillor Parry.
Thanks for the report, which is an excellent, I think, reflection on the work that's been done, and the volume, the number of people that we're able to reach, to support, to actually get back in employment, or to engage in life generally, which is valuable, isn't it? What I couldn't really glean from the report, and I wondered whether it's something that might be just enriched a little bit further in future, is the quality and the performance management of teaching. It's in there in a kind of fairly superficial way. I'm just wondering whether there is any kind of performance management or inquiry or reflection of what's the quality of the teaching like, because it's difficult, I guess, to recruit very often the right number and level of and expertise in for teaching of these courses, particularly some of them, the difficult ones where even schools are finding it difficult to recruit, you know, maths teachers and STEM type teachers. So just wondering how that works.
No, thank you, Mr. Parry. It's a good challenge. So one of the challenges of doing a rather long report like this is deciding how much you speak to, how much you don't, for fear of over-egging it. So performance management in terms of quality of teaching is one of the key areas of assurance that we are very careful to constantly monitor. So there are performance standards that come with the contracts that we provide to the organisations that deliver the various courses for us. We monitor those ourselves, so we have constant engagement with those, and we also monitor, so as in our members of staff who go and assess the quality of teaching. We run almost a scaled down version of the Ofsted inspection ourselves on a regular basis so that we can assure ourselves. The other thing that we do, and perhaps it's the most important thing, is, and it was hopefully drawn out in what I did speak to, is we very closely monitor the learner experience. Although a lot of that is around the positive outcomes that people see from their learning, we're also very careful to monitor what you might call the safeguarding and wellbeing elements as well, which are fundamental to this as well. So in the round, we make sure that the quality of the teaching is high, and that people are comfortable with what they're receiving and feel safe and okay whilst they're doing it. Thank you.
No further questions, so straight to the recommendations, please.
So I recommend that Cabinet acknowledge the developments and performance of the community learning service area and approve the accountability agreement for the 25-26 academic year. I so move.
You've heard the recommendations. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Agenda item number 9 is Connect to Work, brought to you by the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Economy and Skills, Councillor White.
Thank you very much, Leader. So this is another government scheme which has been under development for a couple of years, and I'm pleased to say has survived the change in government. And this is aimed at helping to address one of the long-term challenges we have as a country, which is the number of people who are not in work, but who could work if they receive appropriate support to get back into the workplace. It's aimed nationally to support around 100,000 people who experience difficulties with disability, long-term health conditions and other complex barriers which make it difficult for them to get into employment. So the Connect to Work scheme is administered across the Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent area by Staffordshire County Council. We're the accountable body for that. We're receiving funding to deliver hopefully a peak of 1,200 people that will be supported in Staffordshire and 700 people in Stoke-on-Trent on an annual basis over a 5-year period from this financial year 25-26 through to 29-30. So it's pleasing to see this is a long-term programme, and funding per person for this of £3,600 per person. So there's a quite significant amount of funding that's attached to this. The scheme is under development, but the early estimates indicate that based on the number of participants we're hoping for, that the total value of the programme for Staffordshire could be as much as £20.86 million during that period. So it is a really significant investment in helping people to get back into work and to overcome those barriers to employment. Now, the scheme is very heavily under development at the moment, so I'm not going to attempt to outline all of the detailed activities that sit below it. The purpose of this report today is to seek approval from Cabinet that we progress as the accountable body for the scheme to roll this out. So I will leave it there, but happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
No one's indicating, so straight to the recommendations, please.
Okay, there are a few of them, so apologies whilst I work through them all. So I recommend to Cabinet that Cabinet delegates authority to the Director of Economy, Infrastructure and Skills and the Director of Finance in consultation with the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Economy and Skills to, firstly, authorise Council to enter into an individual grant funding agreement with the Department for Work and Pensions as the accountable body for the delivery of Connect to Work, and a separate funding agreement with Stoke-on-Trent City Council as the additional delivery area member. Second, to authorise the Council to enter into a framework agreement with each of the successful providers following a compliant procurement process for the delivery of the scheme in Staffordshire. Third, if applicable, to authorise Council to amend the Connect to Work delivery plan based on new guidance from the Department for Work and Pensions. And finally, four, if applicable, to authorise the Council to approve any formal variations required to the grant funding agreement based on performance or changes to the Connect to Work guidance. I so move.
All those in favour? That is unanimous. Right, agenda item number 10, brought to you by the Governor, Procurement of Security Services. Councillor Parry.
I feel I need to do this in a certain voice. Sort of Bob Hoskins-esque, kind of, yeah, I think that would work. So this is a recommendation to Cabinet to recommend, and I recommend to Cabinet that we approve the undertaking of a procurement exercise for the framework agreement for the provision of security services, including the mobile patrol, security cover, and a range of other services. Following that exercise, that procurement exercise, the Cabinet delegates authority to the Director of Finance and Resources and Assistant Director for Commercial and Assets to approve. This is a framework which covers static guarding for Staffordshire Place, mobile guarding for North Staffordshire, for the area of North Staffordshire, mobile guarding for the area of South Staffordshire, a key holding and call-out services, and security of unoccupied buildings. The total procurement will be qualified for up to £2.6 million and will be flexibility on a fixed services or potential additional works requested over that 4-year period. We envisage that 5 providers are likely to be appointed to the framework. And without this framework, of course, we'd have to go to spot tendering and quoting, etc., and the plethora of separate tender documents, etc. So this does make sense to do it under a single framework agreement. I mentioned the potential for the total spend. I think that covers all the detail in overview, Leader. So I propose the recommendations as follows, unless there are any questions before I do. I recommend Council approves the undertaking of procurement exercise for the framework agreement for the provision of security services to include mobile patrol, security cover, provide open and lock-up services and external internal patrolling, alarm activation and emergency response as required, control access to premises out of normal office hours, CCTV monitoring, static guarding and office building and reception services. Following the conclusion of the procurement, Cabinet delegates authority to the Director of Finance and Resources and the Assistant Director for Commercial and Assets to approve. And then 1, the award of the framework agreement and subsequent call-off contracts to the successful suppliers and, if applicable, in accordance with the terms of the framework agreement, approve any framework agreement extensions. I so move.
You've heard the recommendations. All those in favour? Agenda item number 11 is the framework agreement for the provision of supply and installation of new and repair of existing fences and associated services. Councillor Parry, who knew that there'd come a point in your political career where you'd be procuring something to mend fences that you may have broken?
I know, and this been my last presentation to Cabinet in this term. Yes, I'm proud of this particular piece. So this is another framework agreement for the provision and supply and installation of new and the repair of existing fences and associated services. This is therefore a framework agreement. The current one expires on the 30th of September. There's a 12-month extension to the 30th of September next year. However, the budget framework has been almost reached, so the council is unable to extend it into a 4th year. The last budget also was set at 1.2 million, but we've realised that this needs to be increased to achieve the 4-year period. So the new procurement, total procurement, will be qualified for up to 7.2 million to 9.6 million to consider flexibility in the council spend and to accommodate any potential additional spending of public sector partners, and they could well be other council, NHS, police, fire, etc., who will possibly want to use the framework once it is live. We don't envisage any single contract to be in excess of £2 million in value, which is the cabinet threshold, but it is possible that it may, over the full term of the framework agreement, that more than one provider may accrue a total of in excess of the £2 million. I think that covers it, Leader, so unless there's any questions.
My only observation, Councillor Parry, is that the size of these procurement contracts, I mean, they are absolutely vast, aren't they? And they come with sort of a regularity which is a bit mind-boggling, really. And each one of them that comes up is, you know, in 5, 6, 7, in this case up to 9.6 million. It's a lot of money. And the fact that we have oversight and are maintaining a careful eye on the public's money in these circumstances is good news to behold.
Yeah, and I agree. And at some point, you know, just to kind of fulfil your curiosity, I think it would be useful to have a look at how this does pan out in terms of, you know, where we are spending this sort of money. I think it probably just tells you the size and scale of an organisation such as a county council of this size, that we do have those kinds of assets that need protecting and need fences. It's just, as they say, the boring day job, isn't it?
With that, recommendations?
I recommend that Cabinet approves the undertaking of a procurement exercise for the framework agreement of the provision of supply and installation of new and repair and existing fences and associated services. Following the conclusion of the procurement, Cabinet delegates authority to the Director of Finance and Resources and Assistant Director for Commercial and Assets to approve. And 1, the award of the framework agreement and subsequent call-off contracts be to the successful suppliers, and 2, if applicable, in accordance with the terms of the framework agreement, approve any framework agreement extensions. Make of that what you will, but I move it.
Did everybody get that? Or do we need another go at it? No? All those in favour?
Agreed.
That is agreed. Thank you. Agenda item number 12 is the decisions taken by Cabinet members under delegated powers. There is just the one brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Education and Send in approving the acceptance of the recommendations of the Local Government and Social Ombudsman, LGSCO, in respect of a complaint against the County Council. Agenda item 13 is the forward plan of key decisions. 18th of June in public, framework for food waste disposal. 18th of June in public, traffic network management plan. Again in June in public, care delivery in extra care housing, also in public, financial outturn 24-25. Again in public, contract for specialist placements for pupils with education and healthcare plans. And then in private in June, sale of surplus land at Hoon Avenue, Newcastle under Lyme. Forward to July, and these are in public, Staffordshire County Council residual waste disposal framework, local transport plan, Treasury Management report for the year ended 31st March 2025, and in private in July, in-house care services update, Four Ashes heat network project, unregulated placements update, and that is the forward plan. I move to agenda item number 14, which is the exclusion of the public. I move that the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business which involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in the paragraph of Part 1 of Schedule 12A as amended of the Local Government Act 1972 indicated below.